What is up, guys? Delboy here. I just wanted to talk about Artur Beterbiev and his career progression, or lack thereof. Artur Beterbiev, to me, has always been an interesting fighter. I was interested in this guy before he turned pro. I recall watching him at London 2012 Olympics, and I kind of researched back from there, looked at some of his amateur fights, and when he turned over as a professional, I was really excited to see how this guy would progress. And I had quite high hopes from his first pro fight. His first 5 fights, he fights journeyman, as you would expect for a new pro. And in his 6th fight, he took on former IBF light heavyweight champion Tavoris Cloud. Now, to me at the time, this was a huge step up for a guy in his 6th fight. Regardless of the fact that Cloud was coming off back-to-back defeats to Hopkins and Stevenson, I still felt for a 6th fight, this was a really big step up, and I was really intrigued going into that fight. And the fight took place, and Artur Beterbiev smokes Tavoris Cloud in 2 rounds. What stuck out to me was his immense strength on the inside, his power up close and on the inside, and just how he ragdolled Tavoris Cloud. And at that point, I was on the train. I really was. I was really excited to see Beterbiev's progression from that point. After the Tavoris Cloud fight, he then fought a guy called Jeff Page Jr. He was an unbeaten prospect. Actually, Jeff Page dropped Artur Beterbiev with a flash knockdown, and Beterbiev gets up to stop Jeff Page in the 2nd round. A few people looked at that knockdown and thought, well, maybe this guy has chin issues, or maybe this guy is too defensively open. So after that Jeff Page fight, there's a few question marks. After the Jeff Page fight, he then jumps in with former world champion Gabriel Campillo, who's a good fighter, and he absolutely destroys Campillo in a really good, brutal knockout display. I felt after the Campillo fight, this guy would start to get the big fights, but that wasn't the case. After the Campillo fight, his next 3 fights were against Alexander Johnson, a guy who I've not really heard of, Ezequiel Mardena, again, not really heard of him, and Isidro Prieto, again, a guy who I've not really heard of. So after that Campillo devastating knockout, he struggled to get fights. After the Prieto fight, he actually then fights for the vacant IBF light heavyweight title, which was vacated by Andre Ward. He beats Enrico Colling for that title by a 12th round stoppage. So to this date, Artur Beterbiev has a record of 12 wins, 0 defeats, 0 draws, all 12 of his wins coming by way of stoppage. And we've seen the theme in Beterbiev's career develop where he's highly rated and he just doesn't get fights. People do not want to fight this guy. He's viewed as high risk and low reward. He doesn't bring a lot of financial clout to the table, doesn't have a big fan base in the West, and he's got a dangerous style. He's a big puncher, he has solid boxing fundamentals, and he's struggling to get fights. And that's not only because he's been ducked, but also he had a lot of contract issues with Yvonne Michel, but now he's signed with Bob Arum, so hopefully he can get some fights soon, man, because this guy is just too inactive. And to me, stylistically, Beterbiev is the type of fighter who needs to be fighting regularly, and that's not been happening. Since he's won the title, he cannot get a title defense. Jürgen Bremer was made mandatory for his title. I felt that was a good fight for Artur Beterbiev. Jürgen Bremer is a good, solid technician. He's a good boxer, but Bremer turned that down. And basically, all in the IBF rankings, everyone has turned down Artur Beterbiev. Marcus Brown turned him down. Anthony Yard turned him down. Jürgen Bremer, as I mentioned, turned him down. And now it's got to the point where the IBF might actually have to restructure their light heavyweight rankings because nobody wants to fight this guy. Nobody in the IBF rankings wants to fight him. And firstly, it's terrible on their part, all the contenders in those rankings, but looking at those rankings, they are extremely weak. Guys like Sean Monahan are there, Blake Caparello, Mike Lee, Frank Buglioni, Men Fanglong, whoever the hell that is. You know, is it because the IBF rankings are so weak? These guys know that. They know they've got an inflated ranking, and they know they're no match for someone like Beterbiev. Maybe their terrible rankings are to blame, you know, because the IBF light heavyweight rankings are terrible considering how strong that division is. So the IBF need to sort something out. They need to restructure their rankings, and they need to force these fights, because this guy is inactive. He needs to fight, and he needs to defend his title. And the other champions are not exactly chomping at the bit to fight him. I don't hear Stevenson say, I want to fight Artur Beterbiev, when these guys were on the same stable. And we hear people who love unification fights. Why is no one putting pressure on Stevenson to fight Beterbiev? You know, why not? But instead he's fighting Badu Jack, who's coming up a division. You know, this guy needs to get fights at this point. If I was managing Artur Beterbiev, I would seriously consider, you know, just taking a non-title fight in the interim to stay active. Try and get somebody in there with a relatively good reputation, somebody who can take you a few rounds, you know, just to keep the ring rust off, just to keep the cobwebs off, because the guy's too good to be staying inactive. Why not try and get in there with somebody like Caro Marat, Joe Smith Jr., you know, guys like this. Get in there with somebody, even if it's a non-title fight, just to stay active, because I just want to see this guy fight. I want to see how good this guy is. I want to see if he can mix it with the best light heavyweights in the world. And if that's not going to happen because, number one, his contenders are ducking him, and those contenders in the IBF rankings are terrible. So, and the other champions are not exactly clamouring to fight him. So I feel Beterbiev is stuck between a rock and a hard place right now. One thing I will say, I do feel that Beterbiev did make one mistake in his career. There was a point when Sergei Kovalev in main events offered him a fight, to fight Kovalev, and Beterbiev wanted to force it and become the IBF mandatory, rather than take it as a voluntary for whatever reason. Maybe he felt his team could outbid main events and they have control of the show maybe, but I think that was a miscalculation. I feel he should have took that fight, because at the time, although I was picking Kovalev to beat Beterbiev, I felt it was a winnable fight still for Beterbiev. He could beat Kovalev. He has the ability to beat Kovalev. But yeah, maybe he should have rolled the dice a bit earlier on in his career, and maybe he wouldn't be in the mess he's in now. But I'm not saying it's his fault, but sometimes you do have to take some responsibility. Maybe taking that fight would have helped him out in the long run, but it's not really working out for Artur Beterbiev, and I think it's a shame, because firstly, he's an entertaining fighter. He's got a lot of power. He knocks people out, but he's got a good solid skill set. He's got a good jab. He's got good punch technique. He's a good body puncher. Really good on the inside. I want to see this guy mix it at the highest level, and we're not seeing that at the moment, and I feel it's a bit of a shame, to be quite honest. What do you guys think about Beterbiev? How do you rate him? Do you think he can become the man at light heavyweight, or do you feel that he's going to get frozen out? Do you feel that he's overrated and the other champions are going to beat him? Tell me what you guys think. To me, he always seems like the black sheep of the division. But what do you guys think? Peace.